Christopher Bell was never supposed to be the biggest story coming out of Michigan. When the Michigan race weekend ended, most of the attention was expected to stay on Denny Hamlin's victory and the latest playoff storylines. Instead, the conversation quickly shifted toward Christopher Bell after Joe Gibbs revealed that Bell would undergo further evaluation following his crash. But just a few days later, Bell has become the center of attention across the garage for a completely different reason. Because what NASCAR fans feared on Sunday, what Joe Gibbs hinted at after the race, and what doctors later confirmed, has now led to a decision that completely changed the conversation around Pocono. Christopher Bell has officially made his choice, and now his Pocono status is finally confirmed. Despite suffering a fractured wrist at Michigan, Christopher Bell has been cleared to race at Pocono. But that's only part of the story. Exactly what was announced, why so many people expected him to miss races, and how Bell plans to move forward despite a fractured wrist, we're breaking it all down in today's video. So make sure you stay with us until the very end. Sunday at Michigan looked bad immediately. Bell was battling near the front when Chase Elliott got loose underneath him entering the corner. After the contact, Bell slammed into the outside wall in a crash severe enough to damage the safer barrier, forcing race officials to stop the event while repairs were completed. For a moment, the focus wasn't on points, strategy, or who would win the race. It was simply whether Bell was okay. Fortunately, he climbed from the car under his own power and was evaluated at the infield care center before being released. At that point, many fans assumed he had escaped serious injury, but the story wasn't over. After the race, Joe Gibbs revealed that Bell was dealing with wrist and ankle concerns and would undergo further evaluation once he returned home. That update immediately changed the conversation around Bell's status for Pocono. Instead of discussing Bell's disappointing finish, everyone started asking the same question: would he even be able to race at Pocono? Given the severity of the crash, it wasn't surprising to see questions immediately emerge about Bell's condition and whether the injury could affect his availability for upcoming races. And Bell notably chose not to speak publicly after leaving the care center, which only fueled speculation about how serious the injuries might be. As the days passed, uncertainty continued to grow. As more information became available, the focus shifted from the crash itself to the possibility of Bell missing races. Some fans expected NASCAR to announce a replacement driver, while others wondered if Joe Gibbs Racing was already preparing backup plans. Then the official medical results arrived, and suddenly the entire story took another turn. Joe Gibbs Racing confirmed that Bell had suffered a fractured left wrist during the Michigan crash. X-rays performed after he returned to North Carolina verified the injury. Normally, hearing the words fractured wrist would immediately raise concerns about a driver's availability, especially at this stage of the season. But that's where the surprise came. Along with confirming the fracture, Joe Gibbs Racing also delivered the announcement nobody was expecting. Christopher Bell has been medically cleared to compete at Pocono Raceway this weekend and will remain behind the wheel of the number 20 Toyota. But being cleared doesn't necessarily mean Bell is completely healthy. A fractured wrist may not keep him out of the car, but it could still become a major factor once the race begins. And that's exactly why many fans immediately began wondering whether Bell was taking a major risk by returning so quickly. The real challenge won't be getting into the car. It'll be handling hundreds of miles at one of the most demanding tracks on the schedule. That decision instantly became one of the biggest talking points in NASCAR. Because racing with a fractured wrist isn't exactly a minor challenge. Competing with a fractured wrist presents obvious challenges, especially at a track like Pocono, where drivers spend long runs managing the car through 3 very different corners and constantly adjusting their steering inputs. And over the course of hundreds of miles, even a manageable injury can become a serious obstacle. Yet Bell never indicated any intention of stepping away. Instead, shortly after the announcement became public, he addressed fans directly. Bell thanked everyone who reached out following the crash, expressed gratitude toward his medical team, NASCAR Joe Gibbs Racing, and the safety advancements made throughout the sport. Then he ended the message with a simple message: "See you in Pocono." Bell's message quickly put an end to any remaining questions about whether he planned to sit out the weekend. And considering where he sits in the championship battle, the decision makes even more sense. The Michigan crash already cost him valuable points. Following the DNF, Bell dropped to 10th in the standings. In previous NASCAR playoff formats, a driver with enough wins could sometimes absorb missed races more comfortably. But under the current system, every point matters. Giving away an entire weekend could create a much larger problem later in the season. That's why simply being cleared wasn't enough. Bell clearly wanted to keep competing. And now he'll get that opportunity. Of course, Pocono isn't exactly the easiest place to return after an injury. Known as the Tricky Triangle, Pocono Raceway presents one of the most unique challenges on the NASCAR schedule. Each corner is different. Each straightaway demands something different from the car. Drivers constantly talk about how difficult it is to find a setup that works across the entire track. A car that feels perfect in one turn can feel completely wrong in another. That's why experience matters so much there. And fortunately for Bell, Pocono has produced solid results throughout his Cup career. He owns multiple top 5 finishes at the track and has shown competitive speed there on several occasions. Last season's Pocono race was won by Denny Hamlin, who once again demonstrated why he has become one of the most successful drivers in the history of that facility. Now Bell enters the same race weekend carrying a completely different storyline. Instead of discussing race-winning speed, everyone will be watching how he handles the physical demands of the event. Can he remain comfortable over a full race distance? Will the injury affect long-run performance? Can the number 20 team still contend near the front? Those questions won't be answered until Sunday. At least one major question has now been answered. The medical questions have finally been answered. Now comes the difficult part. Can Bell actually compete at the level fans expect while managing a fractured wrist? Now, the focus shifts from Bell's availability to what he can actually do on track. The number 20 Toyota will be on track at Pocono, and one of NASCAR's toughest competitors is choosing to fight through the injury rather than sit on the sidelines. Now, the only question left is simple. Will Bell merely survive the weekend, or will he somehow turn one of the toughest weeks of his season into one of its most memorable performances?